Hey everyone! In this video we will be creating a table scene in Adobe Dimension. To start, you need to make sure that you are in the latest version of Adobe Dimension. You can check this by opening up the Adobe Creative Cloud onto your computer and going to Adobe Dimension and selecting Update. Once you've launched Adobe Dimension, we need to create a new document. We will do this by clicking the button in the top left corner that says Create New. Now we are in the Adobe Dimension workspace. On the right-hand side here under Properties, we have our scene units. The first thing we need to do is we need to change the scene units to be in inches. Now we can start creating our scene. The first part of the scene is going to be a flooring. We are going to use the plane and the basic shapes as a flooring. So I'm going to click over here on the plane, and that centers it on our scene. I am going to transform this plane to be the sizing that's listed here, which is 96 inches wide by 96 inches in length. So I need to go down here to my size. I am going to uncheck this link so that I can manually change the size. I'm going to type in 96 and I'm going to type in 96. And once again, you need to make sure that you're in inches before you start typing in these numbers, otherwise things won't be adding up. So this looks really large, so I am going to use my dolly tool over here in the toolbar, and I'm going to zoom out. The next thing I need to do is I need to apply a wood material to this. So I can go over here to my materials, or I can simply type in wood and several wood materials come up. I'm going to drag this material to the plane. I'm going to check to make sure that my position is at 0, 0, 0. The size of my plane is going to be 96 inches by 96 inches. There is no height because it's a plane. And now the next thing I need to do is I need to rotate my scene so that I'm looking at this flooring straight on. To do that, I'm going to go over to the orbit tool, and I'm going to orbit by moving it counterclockwise. So I'm going to pull it like this, so that it's looking at me face on. This is just going to help us continue this process a little easier. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place the cube model onto this screen so that we can create a backdrop wall. So let me clear this search and go back to my starter assets, and I'm going to drag a cube onto here. Now, I need this cube to be 96 inches wide and 96 inches height and 2 inches deep. So I am going to uncheck this link here so that the size is not constrained and I can freely change it. So the X here is going to be our width, and I can hover over this arrow here to see that this is the X. So I'm going to change this to 96. This here will be our Y. So I will change Y to 96. And then Z is the depth, and I'm going to change that to 2. So now I need to place my wall. I'm going to orbit around just so I can see the back here. And now I'm going to grab the selection tool. Shortcut is V for the select. I'm going to use this arrow to push this cube to the back here and have it snap to the very back so that it meets the plane. I'm going to orbit back to the front, and I'm going to slide this over so that it snaps to the edge there too. I'm going to use my dolly tool to zoom back out so I can see the whole backdrop. I can also use the pan tool to move my scene. The next thing I need to do is I need to apply a material to my backdrop. I listed that you should use a marble. So let's type in marble, And we have several options here. I'm just going to drag this one and see how it looks. It's a little busy for my taste, so let's try another one. And that looks really nice to me. So you can choose whichever one you prefer. Now we can start building our scene. So the first thing we need is we need to put a table on this scene. To do this, we're going to go back to our starter assets and we're going to type in table. The table that is available to us in the latest version of Adobe Dimension is the table on the trestles. So I'm going to click this. I can either just click and release, or I can drag it onto the scene. I'm just going to click and release or double click on it. And now it's placed onto the scene. We want to make sure that the position is at 0, 0, 0. Next, we can apply a material of our choice. There are a lot of different pieces in this table. Oop, and it looks like I have two. Let me delete one. Make sure you only have one table. So there are a lot of pieces here. If I collapse these folders in the scene panel on the top right here, so you can really get in the nitty-gritty and customize all these different pieces if you would like. But what we're going to do here is we're going to apply one material, and then I'll show you a way using the magic wand to select other pieces and change other materials in a much faster, easier way. I'm going to grab this birch wood and I'm going to apply it to my table. Make sure that the table folder is selected when you do this. So all of the pieces of the table are selected, and I drag this material onto the table. Now the whole table is this birch color. However, there might be some pieces that I want to color block or use a different material. So let me zoom in with my dolly tool. I'm going to use my magic wand to select similar pieces. There is a setting you can change here in the magic wand setting. So if you hold down on the magic wand and you change the selection size to large and you make sure select similar is checked, you can select items that are similar in size and shape. So if I go to this leg here, I could change this material to a different color wood or maybe a brass. So let me type in brass and I will drag this brass onto there. I can also click this bolt part and make that brass as well. So you can see that if you click similar pieces, you can really go ahead and customize this table to have a lot of color and materials, or you can keep it simple. It's really up to you and your aesthetic. Now that I have my table in the scene, I can start placing items on the table. I do want to make sure my table is centered though. The position is very close to 0, 0, 0, but I'm going to enter 0, 0, 0 again just to make sure. Now that our table has material and is centered, we can next create the cylinder that will hold some of our product. So I'm going to clear out of this brass and I'm going to go back to our starter assets and I'm going to drag this cylinder onto the tabletop. First thing is I need to change the dimensions of the cylinder. So I will once again in this transform menu check the size so I can resize this as I want. I am going to input the dimensions listed here. So it will be 12 inches in diameter. And the Y is the height, which will be 6 inches. So now I have a cylinder that I'm going to place a bag on top of. Next, I want to give this cylinder a material. So I'm going to go back to that brass. Make sure you're in the correct place in the materials, and I'm going to grab the mirrored brass. At this point, we are ready to import our 3D models from Canvas. There will be one bag, one pair of boots, and one hat. The first thing we are going to do is we are going to place the bag onto the scene. To do this, we will go to File, Import, 3D Model. I'm going to go to my downloads and I'm going to choose the bag.obj. This will place the bag on the floor at 0, 0, 0. The next thing I need to do is I need to scale this bag up. To do that, I'm going to click on any of these squares using the transform tool or the selection tool, and I'm going to make sure I get on the square, not the circle, and I'm going to scale up. If you're having a hard time getting on the correct tool, you can go ahead and go to the scale tool, which will activate these squares, and you can simply click and pull. You want to make sure that the bag isn't too big and that it will look nice sitting on the pedestal. So that looks good to me. I'm going to go back to the selection tool and I'm going to move this up using the move arrows. And I'm doing this by eye. I'm placing it on top of the pedestal. So if I go over here, it looks like it's off a little bit. So you want to use your orbit tool to kind of move around and make sure you're placing things appropriately. That just went the wrong way. I'm at a little bit of an angle here, so there we go. And that looks pretty good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to give this a leather material. So I'll make sure I'm in my materials. I'll type in leather. And we have several options here. I'm going to drag this material onto the bag. One last thing, I want to make sure that this bag is sitting on top of the cylinder. Right now it looks like it's in the cylinder a little bit, so I'm going to use this arrow and just bring it up a little bit, and I'm going to check its placement one more time. That looks really good. So now that our cylinder is created and our bag is placed, we're ready to import the boots. This model is very large, which will help us practice our scaling. So let's go to File, Import, and 3D Model. I'm going to select the boots and click Open. So right now things look a little shady and darker, and we don't see any boots. That's because if we use our dolly tool and pull out, our boots are massive. They're over 1,000 inches big. That's just the way the model was created. So in this instance, I'm going to keep this size proportional, and I'm going to scale these down. My instructions say to have it to be about 8 by 8, so I'm going to type in 8 inches here. And now when I zoom in, I see that my boots are right here on the floor. They're in the floor a little bit, so I can hit this button here in the actions that says move to ground, and that will move it from below the ground to on the ground. Now I can go into my selection tool here and use the arrows to pull this model up and place it on the table. I can place it like that, or I can use the rotation tool to give it a little rotation. The next thing I need to do is I need to apply material to my boots. Once again, the boots have a few different pieces. If you also want to select individual pieces of this model, you can use the magic wand tool. However, I am just going to apply one leather to all of the boots, but you can spend a little more time detailing your models if you would like. The next step is to duplicate the boots. You can press this button that has a plus sign here in the actions. This is the duplicate button. When I press that, I see that Boots 2 is now in the scene panel. However, I don't see any more boots. That's because they're on top of each other. So all I need to do is grab any of these arrows to scoop my boots into the scene. And now I'm just using the arrows to position my boots. The final item we will place in the scene is a hat. So I am going to go to File, Import, 3D Model. and click the hat. Once again, this model is very large and it's rotated, so we need to do a couple things to fix this. I'm going to zoom out using my dolly tool. With my selection tool, I'm going to rotate this so that the hat is sitting flat. I need to use this red axis here, the X axis, to rotate it on, and I'm going to hold shift while doing this so that I know that it will snap to 180 degree or 90 degree rotation. However, I can see that it's rotated properly, but now it's below the ground plane, so I'm going to go to the Actions panel and click Move to Ground. The next thing I need to do is I need to resize my hat. It needs to be about 18 inches in diameter, so I can go here under the X and type in 18, and I can keep this proportional, or I can enter some custom numbers to kind of change the shape of the hat a little bit. And now I will use my arrows to bring the hat to the table. Now I need to zoom in using my dolly tool, rotate around here so I can make sure the hat is on the table and placed properly. You want to make sure that it's on the table and not floating above the table, so zooming in like this is going to be very important. All right, let me rotate back to the front. Let me give a little more space here. Now I'm ready to add some material to my hat. So I'm going to type in felt in the material search. And we have several types of materials and felts here. I'm going to drag one green color to the hat. However, I do notice that there is also a band, so I can use my magic wand tool to select that band, and I can give this a different color. And maybe I want something that's a little darker. All right, so now I have my hat, a contrasting band, I have the two boots, I have the bag on the pedestal, everything's placed on this table, which is placed on a plane, and we have a backdrop wall. Make sure that everything is in correct proportional sizing. You want to make sure that everything has the materials filled and that there's nothing floating in the air and that everything is placed on the surface correctly. And you want to make sure that things are in alignment. So that's just what I'm looking for when I am grading this assignment, and you can see the full rubric on the assignment page. I hope that you've enjoyed this introduction into Adobe Dimension. For our midterm, we will be building our own boutique inside Adobe Dimension, so I think that y'all are going to have a lot of fun.